What do you do when the ground beneath your leadership starts to shake? What do you do? I'm asking you when your plans unravel and your teams are rattled and the pressure is relentless. Come on, leaders, tell me now. How do you stay steady in the midst of the storm? Well, let me tell you, in today's episode, Leading Through Chaos, Staying Grounded When Everything Shifts, we're diving deep into what it takes for you and I, as high driven leaders, to lead when all certainty disappears. So let's tune right on in. Welcome to Transformation Station, the podcast where we ignite bold leadership, unlock growth, and equip you to lead with change and clarity and confidence. And in today's episode, Leading Through Chaos, Staying Grounded When Everything Shifts, we're going to explore practical tools, mindset shifts, and grounding strategies so you as a leader can continue to show up as calm, clear, and courageous. So, let's get started. Today, I'm absolutely honored to welcome a true leader in service and in spirit, Gary Rosenbaum. Now, Gary Rosenbaum, also known as Master Chief Rosenbaum, he joined the U.S. Navy in 1996 and has spent nearly 3 decades guiding sailors through calm seas and stormy waters alike. With a career grounded in service, leadership, and unwavering clarity under pressure, he brings wisdom forged through experience and a deeply human approach to leadership in times of chaos. I want to have you join me in welcoming to the stage right now, Gary Rosenbaum. Welcome so much. We're so glad you're with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to meet this person you're introducing. Man, you make me sound really, really impressive. Well, thank you. It's my on this podcast.
Absolutely. You are impressive. And I'm really excited to have you with us today because you bring a wealth of experience in this topic that we're talking about, chaos and being calm under pressure. I know that you have a lot of experience with that. So, Gary, I've noticed that many times when it comes to leadership, we talk about how to lead with clarity. We talk about how to develop people. We spend a lot of time talking about how to cast a vision and how to get results. But there's something that many times does not get enough airtime. And I believe that is what happens when everything starts to unravel. As a leader, like what happens when the pressure mounts, when plans break down, when nothing seems to be solid anymore. And Gary, today the first word that comes to my mind as we're talking about this is chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every leader faces it. I mean, whether you can see it a mile away or whether it just comes spontaneously, chaos. And Gary, for me personally, when I first got into leadership, I was under this impression that I was like Teflon, right? That I would be able to, have my shield and ward it off. But then reality set in, and I realized that chaos is a part of the journey. And so, I want to ask you this question. Experienced leaders, why do you think, Gary, that even experienced leaders sometimes struggle to stay grounded when chaos hits? And then the second question, what are the most common internal or external triggers that you've seen? So first, why do you think experienced leaders like yourself and myself struggle to stay grounded when chaos hits?
I think a lot of it has to do with our own personal expectations. I didn't expect for this. I wanted something to go smooth, and there's something that is causing a problem, and I totally didn't prepare myself for the possibility of there being a problem. I think a lot of the times how we respond and react to the chaos is driving a lot of it. Our abilities to handle the stress, to handle the pressure. And of course, it may not be the event itself that is actually chaotic. It could be a straw that broke the camel's back. Maybe it's something in our lives that we're not really able to deal with personally that's causing extra stress. So maybe this event just triggered something, and then we're treating it like it is the absolute chaos in our lives when it may not be.
Mm.
However, with that said, over the years, the experience, if it's not involving life, health, and immediate safety, I have the luxury of taking my time in making that decision. I have the luxury of taking a deep breath, stepping back, really thinking about the problem before I move forward, because I need to be similar to an athlete, very calm, very cool, in order to give my best performance. Does that
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. Make perfect sense. You know, as I look back over the years, when we talk about why sometimes experienced leaders struggle, I can honestly say I've seen, this is what I've seen, right? I'm not going to raise my hand and admit that it was me, but sometimes we struggle because of this internal and sometimes external pressure to have it all together. Chaos
absolutely?
hits, and sometimes even experienced leaders, we struggle with being vulnerable and allowing the people that we work with, the team, to see that we don't have it all together. And I find that when we do that, even when I've been tempted to do it, it takes away from the team being able to come together and find a solution in a way that really works for everyone, right, without that extra stress and pressure. When a leader becomes reactive or ungrounded, from your perspective, what impact does that typically have on their team emotionally and operationally? And I'm going to ask you to really, especially because of your background, that
Mhm.
operational piece. When a leader becomes reactive or ungrounded, how does that tend to impact teams operationally?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of confusion and a loss of trust when you see somebody that is leading you react in a way that you don't think is their normal way of reacting. Maybe the stress is getting to them. Maybe they're making some decisions that you're not really expecting. I mean, if we look at our entertainment, our movies, our books, our theater, they're full of situations where leaders are reacting poorly to situations. And we really look at the effect of the whole team, how some people don't understand, maybe some care for the leader that's having the problem, and then maybe others rise to the occasion to help lead through that situation. It does, cause a lot of problems. There are people who are personally, care and worry about the leader on a personal level, and then there are people who are strictly mission focused, and realize maybe the mission or the operation is being impacted by the emotional stress that this leader is carrying. So it's not a pleasant time. Causes a lot of confusion, maybe some fear, depending on how serious the situation is. Because the best leadership is built with trust and
Mhm.
transparency. And if you have something in your life that's causing that, I mean, there are several communities in the military where we talk very seriously about a person's individual personal life and how that may affect their performance in the field. And that's a real thing that we are very serious about, because we understand holistically, when we put you to a job, we need you to be focused on that job, and any external stresses may deter from that, unfortunately. So,
Absolutely. I have found over the years that these type of situations many times causes a team to have kind of like a scarcity mindset, right, where they are reacting as opposed to responding. And when everybody, or when the majority of your team is in reaction mode, that does not bode well, right? It becomes a toxic environment in the workplace. Production is down, innovation is down, people start avoiding as opposed to feeling that they are authentic, that they can be honest and authentic contributors, right? On the flip side, I have seen where when a grounded leader calms the room, they can calm the room without saying a word. I don't know if
yep.
you've ever seen somebody, like, there are some leaders that I admire, and one of the reasons why I can think of two or three of them. One of them, I'll say her name is Captain Yolanda Gillen. One of the things that I admire about her is her calm confidence. She walks into a room. She does not have to say a whole lot at all, but her silence says enough. She gives a commands or an order or direction, and you feel an inner strength on the inside to go ahead and follow it, because there's almost like an unspoken sense of security that she's not perfect, but she's confident and she's calm. And even
Mhm.
if a mistake is made, you don't have to be afraid of reprimand or you're going to get ripped apart. You know that, okay, she will address it, right? She's not going to sweep it underneath the rug. She will address it, and it will be a growing moment. She always talks to us about, okay, so what did you learn from this situation, right? So that you walk away reflecting on what happened, as opposed to walking away trying to put some balm over your heart because you're hurting.
Right.
And so, to the leaders who are listening right now, this is a moment, we always like to have a moment where you stop and you reflect. This is one of those moments right now where you get a chance to stop and reflect. You've heard Gary and what he shared with us. You heard what I just shared. I want to invite you to reflect on your style of leadership. And how do you function in the midst of chaos? Do you react? Do you respond? Do you give your team a sense of confidence that, hey, we're in this together? Or do you give your team a sense that they now have to be afraid of how you're going to function with them? It's a moment of clarity. Gary, so let me ask you this. What are some subtle signs that leaders and their teams can watch for that signal when leadership is becoming ungrounded before it spirals into dysfunction, right? We know what dysfunction looks like, but before we hit that point, what are some subtle signs that you can share with us for leaders and for their teams to watch for?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think some of the signs are they're not open or responsive to feedback that they may not want to hear. Um, a- and I think the ability for someone to accept the feedback, it can emotionally frustrate you or stress you, but to think about it and then maybe respond or react in a professional, calm manner to that feedback, I think is the number one um, tell that a leader is becoming ungrounded, or maybe something else is preventing them from being truly focused, as I would say. Yeah, that feedback, if they're not listening to feedback, if they're not taking recommendations, or they stop just coming to you for advice. If you were a part of the team, and they would meet with you, and now they no longer want to meet on a regular basis, or less frequently than you have before, maybe that's a signal that something odd is coming, either with them or with you. You also have to look at you. Am I the one that's the problem in this situation? So um,
Mhm.
that those are two things that I would start to look for. We always say it in our line of work: if sailors stop coming to you for advice, look at yourself. You may be the problem, because you're there for them, to develop them and to help them with their needs. And if no one's coming to talk to you, maybe you've outgrown your use.
Mercy. So, to those leaders who are listening right now, Gary just shared something really important. If in your workspace, if your team does not come to you, will not come to you for any sort of, sit down conversation, mentorship, to share ideas, then that's a moment for you to stop and to really take an assessment of your leadership style and to see what is at the root of why your team is staying away from you or staying away from coming together and having unity in the office place. A few other signs that I was able to think about was mental signs, in terms of sometimes as a leader, if you find yourself indecisive, if you find yourself always overthinking, right, revisiting decisions over and over again, fearing that you're going to make the wrong call, this may be a subtle sign. You need to pause, stop, and see what is at the root of that, right? Another sign, irritability or defensiveness. If as a leader, if you find yourself always defensive, where small things are always feeling big, or Gary, here's one that I've seen quite often. If feedback always feels like an attack, you must stop and take an assessment. I have worked for leaders where I have wanted to share or give feedback, give input. But sometimes I did it because I know if I did, they would always find some way to take my feedback and turn it around to where now it was like a weapon. Behavioral signs, okay? Leaders, I want you to think about this one. Inconsistency. This is a huge sign right now. If as a leader, your yes is not your yes and your no is not your no. Your yes is yes today and tomorrow it's no. You're sending mixed messages to your team. And that right there, if you find yourself constantly giving mixed messages, that is a good red flag to stop and to pause and to take an assessment on your leadership style and your ability to function. What do you think about that, Gary?
100%. You may be that individual may be the one causing the chaos. You know, the
Mm.
team could be able to function well, except if the leader is showing those traits, the indecisiveness, the yes no, I don't know what the boss wants. There's a mixed communication that will cause a lot of stress and make a lot of the team members nervous,
Mhm.
unwilling to give their best performance.
Mhm. Absolutely. Here's one that we may notice but never really don't really talk about too much. What about a loss of humor or humanity in the workplace? They say laughter is medicine for the soul, right? You can't just work, 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 work. There has to be an opportunity to have some jokes or to have laughter. When you notice that there's less laughter, there's less grace, there's less compassion. Everyone is just super hypersensitive. That's a flag right there. Okay, these are some subtle signs that we're functioning through chaos and dysfunction, right? And we need to bring about some changes. So what do we do when we notice these signs? Gary kind of talked about it a little bit, and I'm going to hone on it for a moment. Pause and call it out. Like, call it out. Shift the culture in that workspace with some honesty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reconnect to purpose. Remind the team why we're here, right? Why we're doing what we're doing, right? And then leaders, for yourself, I'm going to invite you, create some psychological space for yourself in terms of slow down and ask yourself, am I showing up the way I desire to show up? What messaging am I putting out? All right. So Gary, in your experience, what is the biggest leadership mistake that you've seen that people make when things go sideways, and how can they avoid it?
Yeah, when things go sideways, I think they don't fully take the time to understand the problem. Again, if it doesn't involve immediate life, health, or safety, you have time to really think about the problem, understand it, try to analyze it, look at all sides to include, how people are going to perceive this decision, and then go forward. Sleep on it at a minimum. Sleep on the issue you need to decide on. I find for me personally, if I get a good night's sleep, the answer seems so much clearer in the direction I need to go the next day. Um,
Mm.
yeah, it's really tough if you are not being. I am a big proponent of sound mind, sound body. If you're not paying attention to your own human body, your own health, and your mentality, uh, you're probably not in the best position to make a hard decision for your team.
Mm.
Do not make that decision alone. Your team is there for you. Ask them for their help. What do they think you should do? You don't have to take their advice. You need to get that feedback on what direction you may go in. That's
Mm.
what we used to call the war council.
Yeah. So you know what you said was really important. I'm going to ask you to say that one more time, and specifically talking about that piece about feedback, right? You talked
Mm-hmm.
about not going on this journey alone. Can you speak to leaders, because that's a real big place where I find that a lot of leaders struggle with. So if you could talk to us one more time, to the leader that's out there listening and watching, when it comes to feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. The teams that you really want to develop and work with, you need to rely on them. I never felt more uh, uh, I don't know, more welcome in an organization until the leader asked me my opinion on something very simple. He said, "What do you think about this?" And when I gave him my feedback, I just felt elated that I was a member of the team giving my advice, my recommendations to this leader. And I learned a lot from that. And I often ask people on my team, what do you think we should do in this situation? Where would you go if you were leading this team? That doesn't mean you have to take their advice, but you'll learn a lot from your team and it'll help you make that decision.
That's outstanding. So again, to our leaders who are listening today, this is another point where we get a chance to stop and do some reflection. You know, take assessment right now as a leader. How are you engaging with your team when it comes to feedback? Are you open with your team to hearing, to receiving feedback? You know, Gary said you don't necessarily have to utilize it, right? But are you open to hearing it? Knowledge is power, and it's really important. In the midst of getting feedback from our team, we also get an understanding of what they understand. We get an understanding of where they are in the spectrum of their of how they're functioning, of understanding the mission, of understanding even you, right? So it's really important that we take time to get that feedback. So, Gary, I want to ask you this question. I really want to hear this. How do you balance being transparent with your team while also keeping them calm and focused during chaotic times? You know, I think about us being in the military, we're always navigating chaotic times, right? It's just a part of the territory. Over the years, over your 3 decades of leadership, right? How have you been able to balance being transparent with the team while at the same time keeping them calm and focused during chaotic times?
There's something that we call uh, sea stories in the Navy, and it is essentially tell them an episode or story about how you were inexperienced and you went through an issue, a problem, a leadership challenge, and you may have failed, but you still remain, you've learned, and you've gained more wisdom. That will be able team members to know that it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fumble sometimes, and me as the leader will be there to help you through the process. We talk a lot about failure, uh, but no one wants to do it. We look at athletic teams. How many managers from teams get fired, yet only to get hired by another team? What we perceived as them failing was really a skill that was valued by somebody else, and they grabbed that person who went through that tough time and that failure. So for me personally, see stories and talking about my own experiences of where I struggled or there was chaos and we came through it is my absolute favorite way to share that type of knowledge.
I love that. I love that. To those of you who are listening and watching right now, I want to invite you to go ahead and put in our comment section. How have you been able to maintain a sense of balance? What have you found as best practices that worked? One of the best practices that I've been trying recently is to model calm, not control. I've learned, and I've seen it even recently, that many times my team will take cues off of my energy. They'll take cues, right? If I'm nervous, if I'm anxious, then they become nervous and they become anxious. It's like in the air, it's not as secure and sure. I don't have to have all the answers. I try to encourage Gary, my team, all the time. I say, you know what, here in this space, we're not perfect, but we are going to be progressive. I
Yeah.
try to encourage that we're always going to try to learn. Everything is a learning lesson, but we're not perfect. We're going to try to be, but we're not perfect, but we are going to be progressive where we're always learning, right? And sometimes for the leaders, sometimes it's as simple as saying, this is a tough moment. I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers, but I trust this team and I know we'll move forward together. Simple. This is a tough moment. Being honest with them about what's real in that moment. I don't have all the answers. You're showing them a sense of authenticity, like, hey, I'm here, right here with you, but I do trust this team. You're letting them know that you're willing to lean on and depend on them and will move forward together. Letting them know outright that you're expecting that the team together, there's no I in team, right? The team together will figure it out how to move forward together. One other one that I've thought about just now, Gary, is communicate early, often.
Mm-hmm.
Communicate early and often. I have seen over the years where silence breeds contempt. Silence breeds contempt because we don't know many times what to do with the silence. So you have this leader that comes in that's looking at you all the time, looking over your shoulder, but not saying a word. You're like, what in the world is going on? You have no feedback. There's no conversation. There's no communication. So nobody really knows, am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? So leaders, we want to encourage you to communicate early. You see something that's going on, don't wait until it blows up to say something. No, see it early, stop, pause, have a conversation, right? And have that conversation often so that those who you're working with understand that we're in this together. Gary, what do you think about that?
No, I agree totally. A lot of times we say, oh, you're just having a meeting to have a meeting. No, there may be times where our meetings don't have a lot of business content, but it's the fact that we're all getting together. And maybe it's those side comments, those side conversations of, hey, how's your son or daughter doing? That we can really glean a lot of information about someone's stress level. How are they going to perform? Recommend maybe take an afternoon off, and I'll get better work out of you later. And they would appreciate that. So a lot of these meetings that people sometimes complain about because they're every day, they're in the morning. That's our way to glean a lot of information about each other. And it's honestly because we care about each other.
Mm-hmm.
That
Absolutely.
so yeah, that drumbeat of communicate early, communicate often. I fully believe in that.
Absolutely. We have Dawn who's watching with us, and Dawn says in her comments that one of the things that you use is humor. She said, Gary makes me laugh, which calms me down. Yeah, that's definitely another tool leaders, you want to use the humor appropriately, but that's definitely another tool that you can use to kind of diffuse the stress, right? Decrease it and allow the humor to settle in and reset the room. So we have a testimonial, Gary, to your leadership. This is fantastic.
I'll have to let my family know there's a testimony towards my humor because they don't find it too funny.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Gary, I want to ask you this final question.
Mm-hmm.
Because we always like to end on a platform of best practices, right? What can we walk away utilizing or exercising in our leadership? What habits or what practices do you recommend to leaders to foster leading with clarity when everything seems to be uncertain?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a tough one. For me personally, I try to understand the problem to the best of my ability. 360, five-dimensionally. What have I thought about this problem? What have I not thought about the problem? And that's where I would use my team members, and we would just bounce ideas off each other to talk about the problem. Well, what if we did this? Or what if we did that? And including your team in that is a type of brainstorming that maybe we don't give enough time to do. But if we have the luxury of time to make a decision, I absolutely want to involve them in brainstorming so that I can learn more about the problem. And also, it allows them to see what they need to be thinking about in the future when they take my place as the next leader. So
Mhm.
I think that's a habit that I like to use as often as possible, and I would recommend, because we're none of us are here alone. And when we talk about team, I want the team to succeed. I don't want anyone to fail. And if I'm not doing everything I can to help a young man or woman succeed, then I'm not doing my job. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. 1000%. I like that brainstorming and being able to bring the team in together to be a part of the conversation so we can build together. That is fantastic. Gary, one final, okay, this is on the spot. To the leader that is listening, that's really struggling right now, what word of encouragement would you give to a leader who literally is in the midst of chaos and is struggling with leading calmly with confidence in the midst of the chaos that they're dealing with today?
Call somebody you trust. So many times I've had situations or problems and I didn't know where to go, and I was starting to feel the stress level rise in myself. And I would call somebody on the phone, a mentor, somebody I trusted, who knew the business that I was in. And once I told them the problem, their solution seemed so simple that I was almost embarrassed that I didn't think about it. But it wasn't that I couldn't think about it. It is that they had experienced it or had heard of this issue before. And so when they spoke about the solution to the problem, it seemed like clarity. So call somebody. Absolutely call somebody you trust. That
Absolutely.
that will help.
1000%. So, to the leaders that are listening, you heard it. This has been an amazing conversation that we had with Gary, a tested, tried, and true leader. Gary, if there is a leader that's watching or listening that would like to ask you a question, would like to learn a little bit more from your experience, how could someone reach out to you or keep in touch with you?
No, absolutely. I've email account on Gmail. Please feel free to put it into your podcast or your chat, and I'm happy to take questions or from anybody. And I may give a dad joke to you if you email me. So
There you have it. Those of you
that's
who are
part of
listening,
the email
go.
right there.
1000%. Well, listen, Gary, thank you so much. It has been an honor to have you and these gems, these pearls of wisdom here on Transformation Station Leadership Podcast. I have no doubt that this podcast is really relevant and timely, and what you shared with us will definitely impact the leaders who are leading right now. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Well, leading through chaos isn't about having all the answers, but it's about being calm in the center of the storm. And if today's episode sparked insight or encouragement, I want you to go ahead and share it with someone else who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review for Transformation Station, because this will help us to reach more leaders just like you. So until next time, stay grounded, stay rooted, stay resilient, and keep on transforming forward.